On DC Music Rocks, we're shining a spotlight on the great songs and incredible people behind the DC region's local music scene. And my man Sean Russell is a multi-platinum engineer who's worked with Damian Marley, Bruno Mars, India Arie, Kix, Odessa, and many others, and works out of Q Recording Studios in Falls Church, Virginia. I first came across Sean when I was attending a Battle of the Bands competition in out in Vienna. What was it? Jam and Java.
Jam and Java.
And they announced him, and it was like, Sean, I want to get you on the show, man. I want to get to know you a little bit more. And so now I'm honored that we get to do that now. Thanks for being here, man.
Sorry it took so long to set this up. This is fantastic.
No, they don't know that. No worries.
I just wanted
it was just last week. Don't worry about it, man.
I wanted to give you some props, man, because you're doing an amazing job of just like highlighting local artists and like playing them on this show, and you're extremely organized about it, and I appreciate that, man. That's very cool. Thank you.
Well, thanks, man.
Absolutely.
I'm blushing over
Absolutely.
here. But we got to stop talking about me because this is about you, man.
Right,
so let's get back to you. So
talk
about now. You're a recording engineer.
True.
What does that mean, really?
That means I try to facilitate the things that artists have in their heads and record them and in such a way that it hopefully makes everyone look good. That's kind of the idea.
And so does that mean now recording engineer technically means that you are the guy responsible for setting up the mics?
This is true.
And doing the recording.
This is true.
And adjusting the levels and editing things?
And editing things, yeah. In some cases, editing more things than others. Sure.
Depending on how it goes. Yep.
Sure.
And now that is different from recording engineer doesn't mean necessarily mixing and all of the electronic computer stuff. This is
right. I do a fair amount of mixing, but on an average day, I will typically dress a studio for a producer, so that different musicians that are coming in, be they session players or the regular type of human musician players, that to come in and be comfortable. So they all have music stand lamps, they all have headphones, hopefully that work. They all have a decent headphone box setup. I'm picking microphones for sources, so if you're an overly bright singer, I'm not going to use an overly bright microphone, that sort of thing. And I'll work with the producer with what kind of microphones that they want, because these different microphones we use pick up sound in different ways, and I try to make sure that everyone can hear everything. And I have a decent collection of witty one-liners that I try to throw at artists regularly to sort of keep them on their toes.
Like what? I want an example. Come on.
There are some FCC regulations that'll keep them.
Oh, there are curse words.
No,
that's funny.
I'm sure most of the time, it's something, like, that was good. There was more good than bad in that. Things like that. You know what I mean? And try not to suck as much on this one. You know what I mean? Things
right.
Like that.
I got you. Positive reinforcement from Sean.
I try to push the artist sometimes.
How did you get into this?
My
this
uncle,
always been your plan?
Yeah, it's funny. My uncle was a huge influence. My uncle Steve Creech. I remember doing a demo tape at like 10, 11 years old when he had to like put a drum set together quickly with a couple of microphones, but he recorded the talkback. So when he pushed talkback to talk to my headphones, he put it on a cassette tape. It was this, me just banging on a bunch of drums and him at the end, oh, it was pretty good, Sean, let's try it again. And I kept that cassette for 1,000 years, man. I got to find that thing. It's somewhere in my house. But that kind of had the bug. And then, in high school, you're in the band and you got to get the demo, right? How else are you going to get the gigs? And I was always the guy in the band that was trying to record us and, trying to put, Tascam Porta-Studio 424 MK2. You know what I'm talking about. You guys...
if they don't know what you're talking about, what does that mean?
Everyone knows the 4-track tape recorder.
Yes. Oh.
Yes. Still have mine. And
straight up tape recorder.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Back in the day.
Just a little 4-track and trying to, figure out how to get the vocal louder, you know what I mean? And then I went down to the beach, moved out of this area here. I was playing it with drums in a band called Pork Chop and the Groovealistic Pork Chop. And I was down in Myrtle Beach doing that for a few years. And that band kind of went south, so I sort of went to school for a year down in Florida and back in 2002. And I got a piece of paper saying I should know how signal flow goes. And then I came back to this area.
Wait. So translate that. That means you got a degree?
I got a degree.
Okay.
That
degree
really,
in what?
I mean, a degree in audio engineering is not really, like a degree in broadcasting or something like that. It's a bachelor's. And I got it, but it doesn't really matter, when the guy's making your record, you're not going to be like, hey, do you have papers to do this? You're just like, man, that snare drum sounds great.
He's going to listen to what you've done before, and then if he likes what you did, you're hired.
Yeah. I don't think a school really matters as much maybe in this field, but I did pay a lot of money for that, and thank goodness paid it all off. And I came back to this area, and one way or another sort of found my way working out of different studios in the area. Now, right now, all of my gear pretty much lives at Q Recording, but there's some other fantastic rooms in the area that I'll visit, like Blue Room Studios in Herndon,
Sure.
Bias Recording in Springfield. Dave Mallon's got a great new spot in Annandale. So being a freelancer, it's great. I can kind of move around. But I mean, a lot of my microphones and microphone preamps and fancy compressors and things, the things with the knobs, all the
Right.
stuff with the knobs you see in the photos, a lot of those live at Q Recording in Red Room. So QRecording.com.
There we go. And Q Recording. Now, what about you outside of all this recording and stuff? Hobbies, or what is life like for you outside of all that?
Sure. Well, we're coming up on hockey season. I'm not a big
Okay.
sports guy, but the Washington Capitals are sort of my thing. And my wonderful, beautiful girlfriend, Patia, the angel, she's very understanding about that. But I enjoy some gardening and botany in general. And she and I kick it a lot. That's a lot of the off time is with her, going to different events. We were just at the Vegan Soul Fest this last week. We got Veg Fest coming up in DC this Saturday. It's going to be fantastic.
Nice.
All of the
So
best.
you're a
mac and cheese.
vegetarian guy too?
I'm a vegan, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Plant-based, and it's a fantastic thing. Actually, I thought it would be. It's really great. It's not just for the animals, although veganism is specifically a liberation for the animals, but it's also for my health and the environment, man. It's incredible, especially with all the global warming and everything in the news. It's never been easier to make those changes. There's so many dairy-free options. It's incredible. So I highly recommend that everybody check it out. Check out What the Health, the documentary. There's a couple different great documentaries on Netflix right now. Cowspiracy. I highly recommend you guys go to YouTube and check out Earthlings. So,
That one, man. And if you're looking at dieting, I just stumbled across the Obesity Code, which is a book that's been tremendously helpful for me, at least, to understand the dieting thing too. So that, along with those, I mean, I definitely watch the ones on Netflix. There's a lot of good stuff out there on diet. Make those choices.
Definitely.
That's it.
Yeah, no, veganism is just an ethical position against the exploitation of animals, and there's no other lifestyle that you can live right now that's more beneficial for, like, not only the planet, obviously the planet, but in yourself, but I mean also just the animals, man. It's great.
Yeah. Now go back to the music and the recording
Sure.
in your life. Now you talked about drums, you talked about podcasting, and you talked
Yeah.
about there's been a lot of different. So what came first? What order did they happen in?
I guess it was playing drums and then trying to record those drums, and then
Got it.
and then eventually.
How old were you when you started playing
I
drums?
guess I was like 9 or 10. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I had a friend drop off some drums, and I guess he was a left-handed drummer, and he left him set up left-handed, and so I started tooling around, and I'm going to confide in you right now here that I'm a left-handed drummer, like authentic. Like,
Whoa,
I don't
like
play
for
the
real?
open hand or nothing. Yeah.
Whoa!
yeah.
So that means you got the
Yeah.
hi-hat on the other side
On
of
the other
kit
side,
and like straight
yeah.
up flipped.
Yeah,
Wow!
It's like a mirror. Yeah,
I'm impressed.
I get lots
Okay.
of people poking at me on Instagram about it, so it's yeah.
I love it. A lefty. So there was
Yeah,
drums,
there was
and then you
drums,
tried
yes.
to record the drums, and that's where the
Yes.
recording came
Well,
in.
one of my first memories, growing up as a kid, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure some people out there, someone in their car right now is going to remember this. It was a Fisher-Price tan sort of, it had a handle, it was a tape cassette that you could record, right? It was probably
Oh,
like
snap.
10 inches wide. It was probably like, this little handheld jobby, and I would hold it up to the radio, and I would try to record off of it, and then I would try to record off that and the speak and spell or something. I was trying to get things happening, so I've always been kind of tinkering with it. Not that I have an electrical degree or anything like that, but I've always been trying to tinker with microphones and stuff, and I still have some of these mics from when I was, in 17, 18, these old EV microphones and things like that, but I guess from there, playing in different bands until, the Pork Chop, and then moving to Myrtle Beach, and then moved it out to Asheville for a little while, and then, yeah.
And so then after that, that's when the podcast happened. Once you working in the studio.
Yeah, I'd been back here for a while, and Justin Trewick approached me about doing a podcast and kind of convinced me somehow.
And what's it for those folks that want to check it out? It's called
TheCircusLife.com, the Circus Life Podcast.
Excellent.
We focus on local artists based in the area and local and touring national artists, of course. But we always try to have musicians on to play music for us.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I make them perform in front of just like one microphone, like one ribbon mic in the room, kind of thing. Very 1955.
Cool. And Sean, my favorite question that I always want to ask is, if you could offer one piece of advice, what would it be?
If I could offer one piece of advice just to anyone?
However you want to answer.
Okay, that's a good question. So if I could offer one piece of advice, let's see, that's a great one. I would have to say it would be listen. So I'm a recording engineer. Part of my job is just to listen. and none of us do it enough. I don't do it enough, but I guess it would be just to listen.
Got it. And listen, and meaning, listen for what? Listen to what's happening. Listen for details. What do you say? A little more.
If you're listening, you're not talking, and hopefully you're taking in as opposed to putting out, and hopefully that's something that I've been trying to do for the last half of my life, and getting a little better each day maybe, but it makes it a little easier to communicate when you're listening.
I love it.
Just
that you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them proportionally.
I love that. That's great.
There it is. All right, and for those folks who want to find out more about you, where do they go?
You can find me on Instagram just at Sean Russell, and I have a Facebook page, Sean Russell Engineering. My website right now is kind of in disrepair, but thecircuslife.com works just fine.
That's right.
So.
Check out the podcast.